All right, so now we have a really fun panel for you of designers talking about their own experiences, whether they've been doing responsible sourcing for a long time or a very short time. And moderating this panel is Melissa Quick, a Steve Quick jeweler, who takes a very serious interest in this as a retailer. And she's moderating a panel of designers. We've got Deb Navarro on the end, Susan Crow, Monica Stevenson, Alexandra Hart, and Susan Wheeler. And I will turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I don't feel like this is on. Can you guys hear me just fine?
No.
Might be a directional mic, so try and hold it.
How about that?
No, on the bottom. Or
I'm just louder than Melissa.
I see that now. Try your Susan, see if it's on.
Does this work?
Yes. There you go. Okay, so start with that one, and I'll get Christian.
Okay, hi everybody.
Good morning.
Morning. So, yesterday we were having a great conversation, Monica and I during the day, and then a bunch of us at Susan's house last night. And we were sort of talking about responsibility and that it's not as easy as just having a checklist. And that there are different boxes that you can check, and to call yourself responsible, does it mean that you have to check every single box off? So the first question that I sort of want to pose to everybody is, what are some of the things that you're doing to be more responsible? And in a broader sense, what does being responsible mean to you? So let's start with you.
Well, I try to be responsible, and I say try because it is always, as we say, a journey. And my line is ever evolving to try and put things in it that are more traceable. The biggest thing that I try to do to be more responsible is ask questions every single time that I buy something. If I buy something from a gem dealer, do you know the mine? Do you know who's cutting it? Where is it from? I try to ask everything, and I'm always learning. I do use fair trade gold, which I've been doing for maybe 4 years now, because that's just an easy thing for me. That's a no-brainer. But yeah, so it's evolving and it's asking questions.
I've taken the recycling thing, grew up a recycle fanatic, and have just continued it. So it's in my entire life. It's wherever I can. It's conscious and conscientious in every step and everything I can do. And so being responsible is being responsible to your own business, your own self, but your environment. It could be anything and everything. And so for me, thanks to some SES certified gold suppliers and some post-consumer diamond dealers and a lot of customers who want their own gems reset, for example, it's become the core of my business.
So I'm not a designer in maybe the strict sense of the word. I'm not a maker, esteemed colleagues here, but I do facilitate the making of jewelry through my gemstone company. And for me, responsibility is kind of having that transparency and understanding the impact that my decisions make all the way through the supply chain. But I also have the opportunity to work with other people and get to know everybody's at a different place in their responsibility. The designers that I kind of utilize for Anza, people have different interpretations of what responsibility is. And so for one designer in particular, I thought it was kind of notable that she said, it's very important to me that my jewelry is made locally and that I have very I pay them very, very well to make the jewelry. She also mentors and empowers women in her business. And so I thought that was an interesting, maybe not every single material she can check the box on, but even things like that, she's being accountable and responsible, and that's a start.
One thing that I like to think about is the word strive. I strive to have market traceability. I also strive to do closed loop manufacturing, which is really understanding all the different impacts that come into your product along the way, along the
supply chain. One of them that is, I think, overlooked a lot is transportation impacts. So I'm very aware of transportation impacts as far as where my project is coming from. And the whole word about just the strive word means that I try really hard. And you never can, well, I take that back. We will be able to, one of these days, have everything in place. And in 2013, I became licensed with the Alliance for Responsible Mining to sell fair mine gold. That was really important to me, and that was kind of the jumping off stage for me to switch out how I do things and where I want my design business to go responsibly.
And then to talk about how responsibility impacts me, for me, it's a journey of learning. I'm not only learning about these different opportunities to produce responsible jewelry, I'm also learning how to design jewelry and have jewelry made all at the same time. And so I hope this can translate to anyone in just starting their business. There's a lot to learn every step of the way. So to be responsible, I actively come to these conferences, the Jewelry Industry Summit. I try to read articles and find out different ways I can do things and apply them as I go. So I use recycled gold, but there's a lot I don't know about fair mine gold and taking additional steps, which is part of my process to continue to learn. I've been able to ask questions and buy my colored stones from suppliers that I know are working responsibly, and to visit in person some of these mines to see how things are done. And I hope to be able to tell those stories to consumers, and that's going to be a challenge, and we're learning as how to convey that. And I think we have a responsibility to change the way people perceive jewelry. I have an ongoing challenge with buying diamonds, so I'm very interested in any progress made in that journey. So when we are able to sort, to know where our sources really are coming from, and not just buying a single diamond, but buying lots of diamonds. I want to be there when that happens, and I want to communicate the journey to consumers that we are doing something.
Thank you. So, I'm still not working. Okay, perfect.
So I think I want to just dig a tiny little bit deeper into this, because we're all talking about these wonderful things that we're doing in terms of our manufacturing practices and production practices. But Alexander, you touched on it in your opening remarks in terms of recycling plastic bags, or reusing sink water, or things like that. I think of it from my perspective, and in my business, I don't know that I'm ready yet to have 100% of the designer partners that I have all be somebody who has this wonderful certification that you have. And so that's why in my mind I'm sort of wondering what does responsible mean to you? And so I'm sort of hoping like maybe we can just a few more things to help everybody understand that it doesn't always have to be the big picture. So I don't know if there's anything else that any of you want to add that isn't necessarily about production, but just in terms of ethics, because what is it that ethic mean? Being ethic means to you. And I think all of us have this level of ethics that we abide by and we live by and we're conscientious of that goes far beyond our practices of how we produce something.
So for me, I believe that when we create a piece of jewelry, we can be affecting so many different countries and developing and emerging economies and people across the world. And, one piece of jewelry, you can have your fair mine gold from Colombia, you can have a gem from Brazil, you can have the Malawi fair trade sapphires, 4 or 5 countries in one piece of jewelry. So responsibility to me is making sure, and we're not always sure, but trying our best that we are having a supply chain to all of these different communities, and what it comes down to is other people that we're bringing up with us, and that I'm not making my money as a jewelry designer on the backs of others. And that's.
For me, it's the whole picture. It's the message. It's in the design. It's in my life. It's in, I use some kind of crazy jewelry examples, like I strive to make it edgy and questionable and, suggestive and engage on every level from design to source. To me, it's really not just about minerals. It's about the whole concern for our planet and our environment. And so for me, it's just a part of the rest of my life. And participation. So the other thing is like by being here, just like sitting down in this room, you have already taken an amazing step. Even if you didn't know, you were participating, stepping into leadership. I'm not trying to run things. I just give a lot of, I care so much that I will jump in to participate in helping other people. I jump, yeah, I'm kind of crazy, but it's pretty obvious I'm crazy. But literally, you can make a difference even if you can't do something, like you don't know if there's anything you can do. You just join a group that's doing something and suddenly you're doing something. Like it's literally available. You don't have to be a leader. You can be a participant by looking out for where you think you can make a difference and joining. And I don't just mean joining a group, I mean like joining a committee, any of it. So it's right there.
So I kind of look at ethics as like an all-encompassing picture. I have given talks on ethics in social media, for instance. What can you say and who can say it? And if it's an ad or sponsored, how do you convey that ethically to the larger audience? So it's not even just a question of materials, it's actually kind of how you live your life too. As anxious as I am and as much as we need to tell the story, we also have to tell a very true story. When we're talking about communicating it to consumers, we can't greenwash it either. So we have to be very careful to tell the truth, and also to, when you don't know, say you don't know. And people will appreciate that honesty more than if you paint everything in these rosy terms and then find out. We lose our credibility as an industry. We need to stay relevant. So I would say that, beyond, yes, I visit mines and I shake the miners' hands and I know where the gemstone comes from, but I also want to make sure that I'm telling the story in a very true, honest way. I think that's incredibly important.
Going off of something you just said about transparency and authenticity, those are two big words for me because they're kind of what I base not just my business on, but how I try and live my life. And the thing about jewelry, it's not just about where the materials come from, it's all of the processes that are involved and how that affects our natural resources, it affects our water, it affects it just across the board. So it's a really large picture to kind of consider, but if you kind of keep the word transparency in your brain, at least if I do, it becomes much easier. And I try and look at things, I talked a little bit about the closed loop idea, the cradle to cradle versus cradle to grave. That's really important because you just have to keep asking questions. Okay, so if I do this, like plating jewelry, I don't plate either. And one of the reasons I don't is because because of the chemicals. So where were the chemicals made? You know, how did that affect the community where these chemicals are being made? How are they being disposed of? There's just to keep asking questions about what my process is, what I'm doing, how it's affecting other people. That's what I just try and keep doing all day. And it's exciting because, you know, I read a lot. I read a lot.
And ethics for me, that resonates with me in terms of not just, well, in fact, I have a problem even hashtagging my things as, you know, responsible sourcing or sustainable luxury or anything like that, because I don't have it in totality. It's almost like I need a hashtag saying, trying to make responsible jewelry. And that's, I'm gonna start hashtagging that. That's a good one. Or something like that. So it is just saying what you're doing, but also recognizing what you don't know, and not white greenwashing, as you said. That whole concept, because then it would water down my brand. I mean, I can't say that all my diamonds are responsibly sourced. I would like to one day. And then on the flip side, it's when I am designing a piece, it's more than just a pretty piece. And I'll just give an example. I have a tusk pendant that when we had an opportunity, I went with Monica to visit a little elephant orphanage, the David Sheldrick Wildlife Fund. And so when someone buys that pendant, they'll have the opportunity then to adopt a baby elephant or foster an elephant for a year. So it's kind of finding things that matter to me or that have touched me and being able to extend that through my design. And give people an opportunity to see jewelry as not just something pretty to wear that is, you know, superfluous to their life, but that really has a purpose beyond just being pretty.
Ladies, at any time if you feel the need to jump in, please do.
So I like sort of these recurring themes that I'm hearing in terms of transparency, which, you know, I think we're going to hear a lot about today and tomorrow. And on top of it, Susan used the word authenticity. And authenticity, like ethics, has a broad meaning, but I think just being true to yourself and true to who you are and being able to convey that is really a very powerful thing, for sure. So thank you for saying that. So my next question for all of you, and I think we touched on it a little bit, but we'll go into it a little more, is I'd like to know, when and why did you become interested in responsibility and sustainability in your design and production? Like, what sort of led you down this path?
Sorry, I stopped you. I think when I first started out, it was casting was here that started, we started the conversation about recycled gold. So I first started in recycled gold, and that was a number of years ago. Now I'm using Fairmind. But actually, there was somebody in American Gem Trade Association, which I can remember was for a long time, Dana Shore, who's not with us anymore, but he was like just this voice about what was going on out there. And I remember when he first spoke to me, and it was just enlightening. I think that's really what kind of was an impetus for me starting the journey about traceability. So it was just, I guess it's mentors you can meet along the way. And when you see somebody that's passionate, has a vision, it kind of ignites that in you. There.
For me, I guess I born and raised concerned, you know, raised by environmental fanatics. And I guess some of it rubbed off. But as I became a metalsmith, I think it was in graduate school, the opportunity, until I realized there was opportunity to work with recycled, for example, it was obvious. And so I've juggled, I've stressed in my life over, here I am in a luxury market. I'm trying to make luxury goods, which are quote unquote unnecessary, right? And how can I be this concern for the environment person and be trying to satisfy a wealthy clientele that has no concern? And when I thought about it and researched it and really questioned deep, because it really was the only thing I felt I had a choice I could do, like it was my thing, like what do I do? It was like a personal crisis almost, like what do I do? And I looked into the history of human beings, and jewelry and talismans and ornamenting oneself and enhancing oneself is as early as identifying as human. So I thought, well, I am human. So no denying that, although I love other animals. And then realizing that no one's really going to throw gold away, right? So I'm working with something so valuable that no one's really going to throw it away. So it's perfect. It's so recyclable. Metal is so recyclable. Most metal is so recyclable, and gold and precious metals are very much often recycled and attempted to be recycled. There's even people out on beaches looking for, gold that wasn't recycled. So anyway, that's when it sort of gelled that I could, and that it was okay to be human.
I like that, giving yourself permission to love jewelry. So I've been in jewelry for my entire career since I was in college, actually. So I got the bug early, and it's been all jewelry all the time ever since. And the last 9 years I've spent writing the idazzle.com blog, and I really profiled independent artisan type designers and jewelers, and helping them tell their stories. They're not always very good. Sorry, you guys are not always very great at telling your own stories. So I was helping tell these stories, and I found myself gravitating more and more towards stories of people who were doing kind of trailblazing this responsible source kind of theme. And I think a really pivotal point for me was interviewing Dorothée Gazinga of the Diamond Development Initiative, and hearing her stories and seeing what she has seen on the ground, and it was very affecting. And I think that's one reason why I was very open and receptive to a tweet that I saw about a jewelry documentary that was going to trace the gemstone of the journey from East Africa all the way through to a finished piece. So I was like, wow, that's the film we'll see tomorrow. And I thought, I was unaccountably intrigued, and I basically told my husband, I'm like, I think I have to go to Africa. And it was as random as it sounds right now. And going on that film trip and actually being there, not just the idea of where things come from, but actually seeing where things come from, truly solidified for me. You see the impact so clearly when you go. You understand that every one of our actions in this room affects those people there. And it's not just a 4-carat rhodolite garnet, but it actually came from somewhere, and someone had to work incredibly hard to actually find that gemstone. So for me, I kind of came full circle away from just, oh, this is pretty and sparkly and beautiful, but I kind of kept thinking there's more, there's more, there's more. I mined it as far as I could until I had to actually go all the way to the source.
I lost my train of thought. I actually went to school to go to be a goldsmith, and when I left design school, I worked as an artisan jeweler for quite a few years, and then I kind of flowed into product design, and I started working for a large corporation in Minneapolis as a senior product designer in the home industry, and garden, so everything from outdoor furniture to large garden pots, trellises, dinnerware, I mean, you named it, we did it. And part of my job was to go overseas to the factories. So it was kind of like, do the trend, design the product, make sure it's made correctly, and get it to the stores. It was, the whole process. While in Asia, I just saw a lot. I saw how things were being made. I was in a lot of factories, saw how people were working, and it just really started bothering me. So then I left that job and started working for some of the factories. So that was an interesting position to be in, because then I was I was contract, so I wasn't really an employee, but I got to see what they weren't showing me when I was working for one of their companies that they sold to. So then I really started to become upset, because I saw a lot more in the factories. I saw a lot more where the workers were living, and it just really started to gnaw at me. So I was actually digging around we have a college in Minneapolis called the MCAT, and I was digging around on their site looking for a sculpture class, because one of my Indian vendors was not able to sculpt what I was drawing for them. So I thought, I'm just gonna have to sculpt it myself. And so, but I hadn't worked with clay for a long time, so I started digging around, and I found a program called Sustainable Design, and I thought, well, what the heck is that? But it kind of really resonated with me because of all the turmoil I was going through with seeing things overseas. So I looked into it, I called them up, and I said, I know a lot about this stuff. My parents were very responsible, and they said, no, you don't. You don't know any of it. And so I started the program. It took me 2 years. That was in 2008. Finished it, and it was like pretty much changed my life in everything I do. And it was very sobering. It took me quite a few years to kind of like get it into perspective. But I decided I couldn't go back to product the way I knew it. And I really needed to develop a new journey for my design. I'm a designer, that's what I do. So I launched a new jewelry company. And that's kind of the history of where I'm coming from, because why I talk about really understanding where everything's coming from, what the impacts are, it's just very important to me. And I'm really happy that I'm doing this. It's been great.
Responsibility got on my radar, I believe, for the first time. I kind of landed in the jewelry industry at the age of 30, coming from radio. I was cutting commercials for a jeweler, so I ended up working for this guy, and then this wonderful woman. And yeah, the woman came out. Yeah. So anyway, and so the first time I ever even heard of responsibility in jewelry was with Forever Mark Diamonds. We started carrying Forever Mark Diamonds, and I fell into that hook, line, and sinker. I was probably the biggest ambassador Forever Mark ever had, at least in the Midwest. And it kind of opened my eyes to the other side of jewelry. When you're working in a store, you don't think about that. You think about your sales, your movie product, what happens to it prior to being in the store was just, I didn't go to the shows, it wasn't part of my repertoire. And then at AGS, I saw the documentary Sharing the Rug. I mean, I just about fell out of my chair. I couldn't sleep that night. And I think the next morning I ran into Roger Derry, who's in the film, and missed the entire breakfast. It was kind of one of those moments where I knew I had to go, and I did the same thing, called my husband on the phone, and was like, I'm going to Africa! And so I did. It's now become like kind of an annual trek for me, and every time I go, I see something new about what one little person like me might be able to do that resonates with me personally. And it's just very, very exciting. I'm so driven. I couldn't go back to work in the store. I had to channel this passion that was ignited in me, and I made the decision I'm gonna figure out how to design and get jewelry made, and figure out how to tell these stories, and so that's what I'm doing.
So one of the things that I think this panel will be able to touch on a little bit better than some of the other panels that we're going to see this weekend is sort of thinking about being on the front lines and talking with the end users, and it was something that Aaliyah was asking me about during the break, so I want to make sure that we address this. But my question would be, or two questions. How do you talk about these issues with customers, and what is it that you're comfortable saying or not saying? So, we hear these great things and we get these great messages when we attend these conferences, but those of us on the front lines have to be able to find the right words. We can't get too much into depth because all of a sudden it's just, and it's going over somebody's head and you see them glaze over and then you've lost them. But it's a great story that we need to share, and obviously, we have this level of core ethics that makes us go in this direction because we're impassioned by it. But how do we get that to translate, and what's the story that we tell?
So my interaction is basically when I have a trunk show for a retailer, or when I'm working on private clients doing custom work a lot. An easy story that is a happy story that I love is about the Fairmine Gold, and when you see Stuart Price's presentation, you'll see why it's such a fun story to tell people. I'm not afraid to, as we heard earlier, say I don't know when people ask questions. And really, it depends on the client. Some clients glaze over when I start talking about fair trade, but if they really want that piece of jewelry, they're going to listen to it, or it just happens. But it depends on the person you're speaking to. Some people really want to hear the stories, and I'm happy to tell the stories. I'm happy to say I don't know when I don't know.
So often, I get sought out because I'm part of Ethical Metalsmiths, or because I state that I'm concerned for these issues, and those people usually discover that there's a very narrow field, and so there's a few who actually, affiliate with an organization and do their best. So a lot of times those clients come in and have great questions, and I answer as much as I can. And when clients don't and aren't concerned, I always have on my invoices, the sourcing, what I know, the recycled content and all this stuff. And of course I want to evangelize, but when they're hiring me, they're getting that, and I state it, basically where I can. But I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. I don't want to judge any other. I don't, it's all about the customers. I don't deal that much with retail, but it really is all about the client. So, if they don't care and they don't want to hear about it, that's fine. They're getting it, but they don't, I don't want to make anyone feel bad,
So I feel very fortunate that I was kind of part of digital media before I started kind of my journey. So I've tried to leverage my platform of iDazzle and my social media channels to kind of reinforce the responsible sourcing story, and not just for me, but for anyone else who's doing really good stuff too. But one thing I ran into a few times when I was first kind of talking to people about it is that particularly with like retailers, they were very concerned about communicating this message to consumers, because they're like, well, okay, great, these this collection, this line, whatever it is responsible, so is everything else crap? You know, is everything else not responsible? And that's a big deal, and it's a big concern. So it's one reason why I think retailers have been concerned about voicing this, is because what does that make you can't answer that question for every single thing in your cases. And some things you might have had for a while, and even if you're all in and totally committed, how do you tell that story for the other pieces? And I think where we've come to, and after talking to a few people, you know, it's okay to tell this, you know, maybe you have 3 pieces in your case that you can say, I know exactly where this material came from, and I can tell you where these things came from. And you know what, again, that I don't know isn't as a valid response for other things. But for the customer who cares, you have those 3 pieces. And if everyone else, you know what, they may not care. They're like, oh, pretty, all right, here you go, like, I'll take it. But for the people who care, you actually have a few things. And just, again, don't be afraid to tell the story. Maybe if they glaze over, you know, you make it a short story, but you planted a seed, you started the conversation, and for some people it's the first light bulb going off, oh wait, where does this come from? So I think it's important to tell, but also not be afraid to tell it because of the light it may shine on other things.
I have to say that most of my clients know how I work, and that's why they're coming to me, especially for engagement and wedding rings. But I have to tell a funny story. So I was doing a trunk show at a gallery, and this woman came in, and she was talking to me, and I started telling her about, you know, different things that were going on in my jewelry. And she said, and you do engagement rings? And I said, yeah. Are you in need of one? You know. And she said, no, but my daughter is. And she said, can I give your name to someone and have him call you? Long story short, this young guy called me up, and he said, can I come and talk to you about an engagement ring? Well, he came and he said, I am so excited to meet you because I wanted to be engaged for a long time to this woman who was the daughter of the woman I had met. And I can now finally get an engagement ring for her because he was extremely concerned about diamond mining, gold mining. He was very up to date on what was going on. And so he found me, and now then I've made him an engagement ring, and his new mother-in-law was thrilled. She emailed me. She said they had been going at it for like years, and he just was never popping the question. And so it was just a real funny story. And so then I made their wedding rings, and then they brought their friends, and then I made something for her. So it was really, it's just, oh, and an aunt came, and I made something for the aunt. So it was a great story. Real fun family. It was definitely working, yeah.
To add to this, to what we've already heard, one thing that when I am telling this story that I realize is to not necessarily talking to retailers, but to the consumer, is just how little so many people really know or care about. But when I start to tell, I have to remember to sort of back up, slow down, and realize that a lot of this information is the first time they've ever been exposed to it. And I hired Marguerite, and she's new to the industry. She's very capable and so many wonderful characteristics of a great worker, but learning every step of this jewelry process is new, and it's good for me to always sort of recognize that I can go on and on and on about all of these great things that are happening and that people are doing, but just to slow down and introduce what you're doing, where the industry is at this moment, to the best of my ability, to what I know and what the challenges are and where it's headed, I think is important.
sorry, but the two people said that when I talk about ethical things, sometimes their eyes glaze over. That's a problem. I'm showing John and Samantha an engagement ring. I've got 5 minutes of their attention. I've got to tell them about our warranty. I've got to tell them about, color clarity. And I can't let anyone's eyes glaze over. I want to close the sale. I need sound bites. I need 2 sentences about how awesome it is to be ethical and responsible. I mean, something like, did you know every kid in Botswana has free education to the age of 13 because of this? Like, how great it is. I mean, do you have anything that's more exciting that maybe their eyes won't glaze over? I mean, that's what I need to close the sale and to get customers interested in what we're here for today.
I probably was one of those people that said that, and I was thinking of a specific person in that analogy, which was kind of a funny sale. So I think that there are good stories that you can tell, definitely, in your sales when you're going there, that's not going to make somebody's eyes glaze over. And I think it's those stories, and it also depends on the client. If it's somebody who doesn't care, then by all means, they don't want a story, they just want whatever you're selling, then, proceed ahead with that. But actually, maybe Melissa, you might be better as a retailer.
I think some of the things that Aaliyah is touching on in terms of having one or two, your elevator pitch, and I think the education in Botswana, or the fact that there's, as a country started to get their AIDS transmission rates under control compared to other sub-Saharan countries, and those are things that you could say about the diamond industry in specific. I don't know that I have those answers in terms of fair practice mining and those things, because I'm new to that world too. So I don't have the elevator pitch or the 2 sentences for that part of it. I know that when I'm telling a story of a designer like Jennifer Dawes, who I consider a partner of mine, I tell a little bit about Jennifer's story and how she is responsible. But it allows me to sort of tell Jennifer's story, and I'm lucky to have that from her as a designer. I would say my advice as a retailer to my design partners or to you would be, maybe have that be part of what you're working on in terms of your marketing, because if you can provide those talking points to me as a retailer, I then have to train my staff. So if you think about the message that we're getting here as a group, and then, if you're a designer, it has to go to your retail partner, and then from there it has to go to their sales staff who's on the front line. What are those few talking points? And the more talking points that we can get as retailers, the more it helps us go back and help educate the end user on why this is important, or why this, more importantly, is a special thing, and why it is that you need to have this, and hopefully those few talking points can resonate. And I don't have those talking points yet, so I wish I could answer that for you, but I'm learning this as we go too, and that would be my advice for the panelists. Help us out a little bit and start working on your talking points and your elevator pitch so that it can translate, please.
I'm interested in how many of the members of this panel are graduate gemologists.
I've had GIA training, I'm not a GG.
Okay.
The question was how many of the panelists are GGs?
GGs.
How many of you are AGTA affiliates?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
American Gem Trade Association has been a force for good and for ethics and transparency in the industry for decades.
Can we get a mic?
The American Gem Trade Association has been a force for good and for transparency and ethics in the industry for decades. And I would like to suggest that they have created something that we can be building on as metalsmiths. And it is very, very important for us to know what we're doing when we're selling colored gems. And so gemological training and AGTA affiliation and having a system for disclosing treatments and identification of the gems we use is an important part of the scene. Thanks.
I can could maybe just add a little bit of that.
So you're right, AGTA has built a whole platform, and as a member, and I will join AGTA, but I have been over the ethics, and they spend a lot of time on disclosure, and that is definitely a huge part of, for myself, I call myself the accidental gem dealer. That is something that I think about all the time, and as a user of those gems, you guys have to be very aware. But I will say that after conversations with people actually in this room, AGTA probably doesn't go maybe far enough in terms of, I think there's room to go even further about sourcing and going all the way back to the supply chain. Not every organization is willing to kind of tackle some of those issues, but certainly they're at the forefront of ethics and how you do business, and also in disclosure of treatments.
I've been an AGTA member for, I don't know, maybe 6 years, and I don't think it's been very helpful in that the relationships that I have with the gem dealers through AGTA, everything's a conversation. So every time I buy a gem, I know the people that I use the most very well, and we have a conversation about the gems. So AGTA has been helpful in forming relationships that I can trust.
Hi, my name is Christina Villegas of Impact. Just as far, thank you. Just as far as storytelling that you were talking about, I think there's a pain point that you're talking about there. That I wonder if who can take charge of that pain point, whether it's the in your role as a seller. I can tell you where to find stories. Both Fairmind and Fair Trade, I work with both of them. I'm on the technical advisory committee for Fair Trade Gold, and where I work with Fairmind in the field, in bushes, in the mud, on mines. And both of them use a very similar standard, and that standard by the miners, by the mine workers achieving it, it tells you a lot about the conditions under which that was made. It's a guarantee that it's a promise. Now I know it can kind of get a bit technical, such as reducing mercury, or whether it's mercury-free, the difference between the social conditions, labor conditions. But one thing you can do is look at the standard and be assured that if it's coming from one of those two sources, it has met that standard, and there is assurance, either second or third party assurance. It's not a perfect solution, but it's a first step. You just take a look at that standard. It's actually very layman friendly, layperson friendly, shouldn't be sexist. Layperson friendly. It's very specific as far as transparency requirements from the mine to the trader to the export, labor conditions, things like that, and it involves progressive improvement. So what you can say when you're selling these stones is, this gold or this platinum or whatever it is that you're buying has been made under the best conditions in the world for artisanal small-scale mining sources. So gold canners or gold diggers, I shouldn't say gold diggers, it's not a term. Anyways, I work with gold diggers all the time. Love it. But yeah, as I said, it's the best standard in the world, both fair trade and the fair mining standard from this group that's very special. We don't yet have a kind of a shiny source for colored stones that are artisanal small-scale mining sources. I'm working on that. That's part of Monica and my panel in the afternoon. But Fairmind and Fair Trade did a wonderful job in actually getting that product made under the best conditions that are possible right now.
Should they check their website maybe?
Yeah, check their website.
Check the website for talking points. So
Yeah.
that would be a great place to start.
If you Google Fairmind, it sends you to responsiblemines.org. If you Google Fair Trade
And
Gold.
I'm going to play the devil's advocate with you for a second, but what you've already said, my client would have already glazed over at the counter.
Yeah.
Aaliyah's right. We have this much time to get the message across, and it really needs to be bullet points.
So
And
the bullet
usually
point
people
is,
want to see what it
that's the
is.
digital.
They want to feel good about their purchase. And so it needs to be something really quick that we can say that makes them feel good about it. Please, you're give it to me, give it to me. Sound my crowd.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a blatant pitch, but for not any particular organization in particular, but as a retailer, as someone who's working for a retailer, make a contribution. It doesn't have to be huge, but it has to be consistent to any of these organizations, to PACT, to ARM, Alliance for Responsible Mining, Diamond Development Initiative, Mercury Free Mining Initiative. I mean, there are so many. Which one speaks to you guys? And on an annual basis, you make that and you say, when all you have to say is, we care about our product, we care about the impact on the people's lives that it has, we want to feel good about selling it to you, and we support XYZ on an annual basis because we care.
Aaliyah, did you get that?
Yeah, I'm almost done.
That's it. And if you don't have the authority, pitch the owner of the store and say, I believe in this. This is a good thing. This is going to be good for us. And we can tell them we care about our product, we care about our industry, we want you to feel good about what you're putting on your body. And we support the Diamond Development Initiative, or Jewelers for Children, or, go on and on. Just pick one and do it.
One of the hashtags for Fairmine Gold is gold to be proud of. That's a really good one. This is gold to be proud of. And then you can, what do you mean? Gold to be proud of. Why can't, and then you can branch off into talking about why you're proud of this gold.
We're having a good discussion. You mind if we take a few more minutes?
I'll just say.
Go ahead. Okay, perfect. Next, I think.
My name is Chris Latrobe. I started taking groups of jewelers back to the diamond mines in the late 80s. And I did it for 20 years. And the issue that Aaliyah raised was something that we grappled with all the time. How do you deal with the situation we found is that we would take these jewelers on an immersion course in diamond mining and cutting, and they'd have this wonderful experience, and then they'd get back to the store and half the staff didn't know where they'd been for the last 2 weeks. So you have these communication gaps, and we tried everything. We tried trainers, we joined all the organizations, we produced materials for the stores, and in the end what we found is that it can't be up to the sales associate. If everything's coming down to the 2 minutes or the 30-second soundbite, you've the horse has bolted a long time ago. It's got to be in audio communication, and it's got to be something. The stores that did best in our experience, it was a very visual thing. It could be something it could be an album on the coffee table, pictures of what's going on. But you've got to make it part of the culture, part of your communication. It's a very tough process, and and if you can get an image out there that can tell your story, that's probably going to be far better than trying to drum something into a sales associate, which, under the pressure of the moment, it's probably not going to deliver the goods. So.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'll go to you next if we have time.
Hi, Toby Pomeroy, and Chris, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for all your work in having that be available to jewelers and their customers. I think one of the things that I've experienced both in retail and in working in the environment of responsible sourcing has been if we aren't operating, if we're not sharing something that we are truly moved by, if we don't have our passion located in what we're sharing, it's just a concept and it will remain a concept for them. So I think it's critical that we open ourselves up to be able to get connected to something, what we're sharing at that level, so they can actually connect with it. It's passion is everything. Our purpose is everything. It's the background on what all this is based on. So I love your question about how we actually get this told. And it's so pertinent. Thank you very much.
All right, last one.
I'll be very succinct.
Thank you.
So, my name is Sam Shiroff, and I'm a Director of Corporate Social Responsibility at Signet Jewelers. I know we're a slightly different animal than a lot of the people who are in the room, but we have focused on how do we work with our team members in the stores on these specific issues. First of all, what Pat said is exactly what we do. We've chosen to have a little DDI, Diamond Development Initiative, symbol. We actually support almost all of the groups you mentioned, but we don't want NASCAR, right? Not stickers everywhere. It's just one thing. And then when it comes to all of the questions that people may ask, whether it is on colored gemstones, on diamonds, on gold, we have a sheet of paper that they can go and print out from our, the way that we do it, and essentially read it and then hand it to the customer as a process of reassurance, okay? That we've got this covered if they're interested. Naturally, if you want to bring it up, you may want to have some other points. I'm not going to distribute that to you, but if you go to one of the stores and ask them, you'll get it. I'll find out too, because the other thing is they're supposed to tell me that they've gotten this question. So just in the context of how do we approach it, it is what has been suggested amongst the group.
Thank you, everybody. Those were really great questions, and thank you so much to the panel. I strongly encourage everybody to continue this conversation throughout the next day and a half. I think that there aren't a lot of opportunities in our industry where we have people together in one room that cover every end of the spectrum, from the dirt to the door, and it's really valuable. I know I'm constantly learning from all of you, and hopefully, we were able to share some of our knowledge from our segment of the industry, but thank you so much.